Good morning and welcome to Michigan Farm and Garden. I'm Jody Pollock-Newsome and I'm your host. We have a great show lined up for you this morning. This morning we're going to talk to you about wheat, and more wheat. We're going to talk about the milling industry. We're also going to talk about end users, and we're also going to talk about breeding. Stay tuned. Good morning, and again, welcome to Michigan Farm and Garden. You know, folks, we talk about the diversity of agriculture that we have here in our state. Certainly, we know it's over a $90 billion industry. One of those industries is certainly for us, and one of the very historical industries is the wheat industry. When we look at wheat and wheat production, not just in the U.S., but across the world, a very, very long history, very long tradition, and certainly here in our state, goes back to the 1800s. When you look at the opportunities and really look at how agriculture got its roots and got things moving along. So on the show this morning, we are going to highlight the wheat industry, and my first guest is Art Leffler. He is with Star of the West, and they are one of those millers that we have here in our state with a very long history. So we're going to talk a little bit how they got started. We're going to talk a little bit about the name, where that comes from, and then we're going to talk about that milling industry in our state and what it means. Then certainly when you have the milling and you're looking at the wheat industry, you definitely need those end users. So we also have with us this morning Deirdre Ortiz. She is from Kellogg's company, and she is going to talk to us about Kellogg's, how they look at wheat, what they use in their processes, and then we're going to share with you some of the products that are made from Michigan wheat. Then for my third guest this morning, I have Dr. Eric Olson. He is with Michigan State University, and he is the new wheat breeder at the university. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about what wheat breeders do, what's the timeline, and what he's looking at to be able to move the industry forward in Michigan. Then we'll wrap the show up with a great recipe for breakfast cookies. It's going to be a great show. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with our first guest right after the Michigan Farm and Garden Fact of the Week.
It's time for the Michigan Farm and Garden Fact of the Week.
When it comes to wheat, Michigan has 8,000 wheat farmers in more than 50 counties. They plant more than 500,000 acres, producing about a 40 million bushel crop annually. That crop has about a $388 million annual economic impact. For more information, go to mywheat.org. And welcome back. We are back with Art Leffler, president of Star of the West. Art, welcome to the show.
Jody, it's a pleasure.
It's good to have you here. I'm going to have you start and tell us a little bit about yourself and Star of the West, and then we'll talk more about milling.
Okay, great. Well, my background, I graduated from Michigan State in 1973. My degree was in accounting, not ag, but at that time I wanted to be an accountant, so I took a job with Kraft Foods as an internal auditor for a few years. Decided to get my CPA certificate, so I came back to Saginaw, worked for Yo & Yo CPAs, and one of the jobs I was assigned to was Star of the West Milling Company. So after about 2 years on the job, working with Dick Kraft, who was president at that time, and he had a couple of bookkeepers doing the accounting, and I decided it was a growing company and they needed more help, and so at the end of the audit, the second year, I told Dick that, hey, he needed help, and I think I'm the guy for the job. So he said, let's have lunch, and in 1979, he hired me as the controller, and so from there I became, over the years, executive vice president, and in 1997 became president, so it's been a good ride.
So, well, and it's exciting too, especially, you know, as I'm getting more into the wheat industry and learning more, just the history, and I think too, the camaraderie and how well everybody works together in the wheat industry in the state is just amazing.
Yeah. Well, the history of milling, it kind of goes back to the settlers, and I'm from Frankenmuth, and our community was settled in 1845 by 15 Lutheran missionaries who came to teach Christianity to the Indians. And a year later, another 100 folks came, and two of those folks were Johann George and Johann Matthias Hubinger, who history back in Germany, their family had been milling flour for 200 years. So they came to Frankenmuth, and of course in those days it was a wilderness, and so you had to live off the land, correct? So you needed a lumber mill, you needed a feed mill, and you needed a flour mill. And so the boys built the first flour mill in 1847, and they worked together till about 1851, and Johann George decided he wanted to do something else. So he sold his portion, bought a general store, and worked in that till 1870. 1870, I guess he got the itch to get back into the milling business. So he moved upstream and he built Star of the West Milling Company in 1870.
Wow.
So a lot of people ask me, how did that name, Star of the West Milling, come about? Well, if you're a historical buff, if you go back to Charleston and the beginning of the Civil War, the North and South weren't getting along very well, and the Union chartered the Star of the West merchant marine ship and tried to smuggle 200 Union soldiers into Fort Sumter. Well, the spies learned of that, and as the Star of the West came into the harbor, they fired upon the Star of the West, and those were the initial shots of the Civil War. And so patriotism is kind of the feeling we believe that he named his company Star of the West Milling Company. So.
Wow. You know, I have to say, I just love that history and finding out the stories behind, and you know, especially when you look at an industry like that that grew and evolved so well and stayed here in our state.
Yeah, you talk about the milling industry back then. Of course, in those days, 1870, we had 22,000 flour mills in the U.S., if you can believe that. Today we have about 200. Same with Michigan. It seemed like every community back then, as they settled, they had a feed mill, a lumber mill, and a flour mill. But eventually nowadays we have 6 mills left in the state of Michigan. So it has been a pretty bloody battle to be a survivor from those days to be a survivor today.
Well, and certainly, you know, when we look at those mills, and you're looking at products, are you guys all looking at the same kind of thing? How does that shake out?
Pretty much, as you know, wheat in Michigan, it's all soft wheat, but we do have different varieties. We have soft red and soft white. Now, if we go back 35 years ago, the majority was soft white wheat, but today it's probably 30% soft red, or 30% soft white and 70% soft red. So it's a soft wheat, which is different. If you go out west, you've got the hard wheat in Kansas, or if you go to the plains, you've got the Durham wheat and so on. So it's a unique soft wheat that we grow here in Michigan. So the flour mills all grind soft wheat. There's a few of them who will bring some hard wheat in to grind, but most of us stick to the soft wheat milling. So one in particular uses it. You talk about the different mills, Jiffy Mix, Chelsea Milling, they grind. They're a flour mill, but basically their product is used internally for their boxes that they produce. The other mills, Manel Milling, King Milling, and Napa Milling, all pretty much the same. We're all soft wheat millers and do basically the same things. So.
Lots of diversity, lots of opportunities. When we look at products, you know, the different wheats certainly work for the different kinds of products.
Yep. So our industry, soft wheat products, we'll talk about the flour and then we'll talk about the brand. But the flour, we use it for pies and cookies and cakes, and I see you've got a cookie recipe later on, so that's good. Pies, cookies, cake, pretzels, some of the unique ones that people don't associate wheat with, but soups, soup thickeners, tomato soup or a mushroom soup thickener, licorice from the candy side. There's a lot of flour that goes into that. And then we get into the cereal industry, and really why I think we've been so successful in Michigan in the milling industry is because of the cereal industry. And I know Deirdre's going to be here later on and talk about Kellogg's, but they're very key to our industry, and they are the ones who kind of keep the soft white wheat business in Michigan going, because soft white wheat, its texture and its mouth taste and flavor is a little different than the red, and so they've kind of focused on soft white. And so our mill and other mills produce bran for them. So it goes into your bran flakes, your shredded wheats, Wheaties, some of the flour that goes into at Fruit Loops, and those type of things. So it's a great industry for the state of Michigan.
It really is, and our time always goes way too fast. I know. I so appreciate you being here, and folks at home, just certainly as we think of the wheat industry, so many different opportunities and so many markets built on those strong mills that we have in the state that are provided that wheat right by our growers.
The Cherry Marketing Institute wants you to know about tart cherries. Cherry's red color comes from powerful antioxidants. Available year-round, it's easy to incorporate cherries into your daily diet. Visit choosecherries.com.
Michigan's 1,000 apple growers take pride in producing delicious apples from one generation to the next. From the Great Lakes come great flavors. Look for locally grown Michigan apples.
Have Jody speak at your next agricultural event. Go to jodylive.com.
And welcome back. We are back with Deirdre Ortiz of Kellogg. Deirdre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jody.
It's good to have you here. I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk to you about your role at Kellogg, and then we'll talk about the cool stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm work for the Kellogg Company. I'm a fellow. That's my title. It's a rather unusual title, but what it means is that I direct technical programs for the Kellogg Company. So I'm a technical leader within the organization, and one of my major roles at Kellogg's is to direct the wheat programs. So I get very actively involved in global wheat programs for the Kellogg Company.
Well, and certainly when you look at wheat and look at wheat products at Kellogg's, it puts you in a very unique position, especially when you look at Michigan and our wheat industry.
Mm-hmm. So Kellogg's has had a history in Michigan. We've been here for a very long time. We started here, and we started with a lot of products that are Michigan-based. So we started with Michigan soft white wheat because that was what was here and what was available to us. And so a number of our products that we make are made with our heritage grains that we've had that were local to Michigan for a really long time. So we've had a really solid relationship with the Michigan wheat industry because that's what we use for a number of our products.
Well, and I think a lot of times people don't realize that tradition and the importance of wheat is not one of those crops we really talk about a lot. And, you know, certainly when we look at Michigan, wheat is very important.
It is very important. Michigan actually grows a type of wheat that's unusual. Michigan grows a soft white wheat, which is grown largely in the thumb and the thumb region. And then there's some pockets of white wheat that are also grown in other parts of the East, like Southern Ontario, a little tiny bit in New York, and virtually none in Pennsylvania. But there used to be a really solid growing base of soft white wheat in the Great Lakes growing region, and now it's pretty much only Michigan. And that's a really unusual, the eastern soft white wheat is really an unusual crop. So there is soft white wheat grown in the western part of the United States, but it's a little different than the Michigan soft white wheat. And we really cherish and value the Michigan soft white wheat for a number of our products.
Well, and certainly looking at, you know, there's not a lot of times that there's a neat market opportunity to really capitalize, especially when you have products that are really built around that white wheat.
Yeah. So and it's not just us, it's not just Kellogg's that has built around that soft white wheat. There's also Triscuits, which is a famous brand from another company, which actually says on the side of their box that they're made with the cashmere of wheat, soft white wheat. So they're they're romancing something that we believe deserves romancing, which is a really special wheat product that's grown in Michigan.
Well, and certainly when we look at the white wheat, you know, what are, I guess, some of the specifics that does make it kind of that cashmere, that special product?
Okay, so soft white wheat is, well, first of all, it's a soft product, so it makes really good products like ready cereals, it makes good biscuits, which are crackers and cookies. It makes other products that would normally be a soft product made with a soft wheat. White wheat means that the bran component of the wheat is more sweet and less bitter. So generally it doesn't have as strong of a grainy flavor to it, and so while we are making products with a lot of whole grain and or bran as their major component with this white wheat, it doesn't taste as strongly bitter and grainy as maybe some other products that are made with a red wheat.
Well, and I think that's so important because I think a lot of times people think wheat is wheat is wheat, but there's so many different varieties and there really are differences.
There really truly are differences, and so look for products that have a really good flavor in wheat, and I think you'll find that a lot of them are soft whites.
Well, and I know one thing that we go through a lot of at our house is certainly Pop-Tarts.
Absolutely. There are some Pop-Tarts, not all, but some Pop-Tarts that are made with a soft white wheat flour. And part of the reason why we make it with a soft white wheat flour is because we use a lot of soft white wheat bran in our all bran products. And so to help the mills be balanced, we also use the soft white wheat flour in some of our Pop-Tarts.
Well, and I think it's so important you say that because we certainly know Michigan is very important to that industry, but the relationship, I'm into wheat now and
Yes.
learning more about that, but the relationship that you all have to make sure you use this product, but you have a use for that product,
Yes.
it's just been so amazing.
Well, the Michigan wheat world is relatively interconnected. And so not just Kellogg's, but also other cereal makers like General Mills and Post, and then other people that make biscuits like Nabisco. We all do, to some degree, talk amongst ourselves along with the Michigan millers and the wheat breeders to make sure that there is still a market and a place for this unique crop to go. It's very important to all of us. We've worked hard together to make sure that that crop still exists because it's rather unique to Michigan and we think it's important.
Well, and I'm so glad you say that too, because we talk about the diversity of the ag in our state, but really white wheat just has a really good opportunity here,
Absolutely.
especially with some of those markets.
Absolutely. There's a rather expanding market for white wheat products, and we've seen all of the major companies that use white wheat invest in the white wheat that's grown in Michigan, and I think that's really an important story for people to understand and know.
Well, and we talk a little bit, some good stuff for consumers, specifically for growers. I guess what would you want them to know or realize that's important?
So growers need to know that companies are investing in soft white wheat. We are working on the agronomics of soft white wheat as well as the breeding of soft white wheat varieties that are agronomically favorable and that will provide you with an excellent yield. So we've worked closely with Michigan State to make sure that there's an active public breeding program. It's not just private breeders. We've also worked closely with private breeders to make sure that there are new varieties coming out annually that have really strong agronomic properties so that they can grow a crop that makes them money. So, because I want everybody along the value chain to win. So it should be growers need to have a product that they can grow and make money at. Millers need to be able to, elevators need to be able to make money, the millers need to make money, and then we need to be able to make money as well. So all along, and we need to provide a value crop to consumers. So all the way along the value chain, everybody needs to win.
Well, and as we talk about that will certainly keep us successful. What do you see as the future?
Well, there's so much going on with Michigan wheat. We're actually investing in some new varieties of soft white wheat that we think can be game changers. They provide some unique food properties that we think will really move this crop into something that's new and exciting. We're also working hard to make sure that this crop is sustainable from a business perspective and from a environmental perspective. So we want to make sure that wheat gets the credit that it deserves for being an environmentally sustainable crop.
Great. Deirdre, well said. We appreciate it and appreciate the information and learning a little bit more about Kellogg's and how they work with the industry and with the growers. So we look forward to lots more good products in the future.
Thanks.
Folks, certainly we know the importance of agriculture in our state. We don't always think so much about the wheat industry, but just some more information when we look at the end user side of that, how the industry comes together and why wheat is so important. Stay tuned, we'll be back after this message. And welcome back. We are back with Dr. Eric Olson of Michigan State University, the new wheat breeder. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jody. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you here on the show, but it's good to have you here in Michigan as well. So
yes.
It's very exciting. I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm originally from Wisconsin, grew up on a small dairy farm, and studied at the University of Wisconsin in Platteville. And I've worked in wheat all through graduate school at North Carolina State, and then in the hard wheat region at Kansas State University. And I started in May 1st here at Michigan State, just in time for the field season. And so we're gearing up for planting this fall. So things are up and running and moving right along.
Well, and I know you know, but we've talked about it on the show today too, all the importance of the wheat industry in our state. So, I mean, as you come as the new wheat breeder at MSU, where do you start? How do you focus? What do you do?
Yeah, it's everything starts in the greenhouse with crosses, and we do traditional plant breeding where we find two lines that have all the traits that we want. We make the cross and let the genetics do its magic, and it takes several years in the field to select lines that have all those traits that we're looking for, and eventually those lines will make it into yield trials, and hopefully in the end we find an elite variety out of that.
Well, and I think that's so important too that you talk about. It is, when we look at wheat, it still is the traditional plant breeding. It's not, it's the genetically modified, it's not a biotech. You are doing the traditional.
Wheat is traditional now, yep. There's no cut and pasting of genes. It's all the variation that we have is what's in or exists in wheat varieties that are currently grown now, or exotic germplasm. But yeah, it's traditional plant breeding.
So when you're in a state like Michigan, most states don't have white wheat. So you have the red wheat, you have the white wheat. Does that give you an advantage when you're looking at having those different lines?
Yeah. We get to access the diversity in both red and white wheat. And we're able to focus on both varieties, because like Art was saying, 70% of the wheat is red, and then that 30% of white wheat is very critical. And so we can use the traits that are in red wheat to improve the white wheat, especially for yield potential and all of the the challenges associated with white wheat. So we can actually work with both gene pools then in improving varieties.
Well, and when we're looking at stuff like this, I mean, science has come a long way, so you can definitely move things up, but this still isn't a silver bullet.
It isn't. It's still a long-term investment. From that initial cross, it can take 10 to 12 years to develop a new variety that has all of the traits that growers and the industry are looking for. And so it's a process. But we do have some technology that can accelerate that process. We can shorten the time to variety development, some DNA sequencing technologies, and some, I would call them advanced breeding technologies, like doubled haploids is something we're becoming involved in, which with that technology we can cut the time to variety development about in half.
Wow. And
combining it with other molecular markers and DNA sequencing technologies, we can identify early on the varieties or the traits in the varieties that we're looking for, and bring all those traits to market in new varieties.
Well, and I think that's so important because it certainly is. You know, when you look at Michigan, I think we're so unique because we have that white wheat component, and we are so different than the Durhams or the hard wheats.
It's a unique market class, yeah, and the wheat industries thrive on the soft white wheat that's grown here. So yeah, it's definitely something a market class of wheat that's unique to Michigan.
Well, and I guess as you look ahead, not that you've been here that long, but you know, here you are, you're building your program. What do you see as some of those opportunities in the future of wheat in our state?
Yeah, it's we're looking to reach some new yield plateaus. There's some real opportunities to develop varieties that you know that are very high yielding and that have you know the tolerances to all the to the challenges of wheat production in the state.
Well, and I know especially with white wheat, we do have a yield decrease and we have disease susceptibility.
Yeah, there are some specific diseases that are a challenge in white wheat, but I see that as opportunity.
Good.
To improve the varieties, white wheat varieties.
Great. We appreciate it. Eric, we will have you back in a few months and you can tell us this is what we've done so far, this is what looks good, and I know it takes time, but we are excited to have you here and we are excited about the opportunities for wheat in Michigan.
Yeah, me too. It's great to be here.
Good. We'll have you back.
Thanks, Jody.
Folks, stay tuned. We've talked about wheat. We'll be back right after this message and we're going to share with you a great recipe for breakfast cookies.
This chicken is beak over claw for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one chicken may not be too much to cluck about, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing, our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
And welcome back. Folks, you know, we talk on the show. I've had the great opportunity to be much more involved and to work in the wheat industry. Just when you look at the history, certainly that we have here in our state, the commitment here in our state to wheat production, milling, the end users, when we look at the research side, it is a very exciting industry to be involved with, especially when you're looking at products that you use to make things like cookies and pastries. So I'm gonna make sure I get right to you a recipe. This is for breakfast cookies. Certainly if you're running behind in the morning, this is a great way, a great product to have just in the house. Basically, you're gonna go ahead, preheat your oven to 350, go ahead, grease your cookie sheet, and then you're going to combine your whole wheat, your all-purpose flour, your baking powder, your soda, your salt, your orange peel, and your raisins or your dried cherries. Then go ahead, mix the cereal, the bran, the juice, the egg, the oil, the applesauce, the honey, and the dry milk. Blend that together, mix those two mixtures together, put those on the cookie sheet, and bake them about 13 minutes. It is gonna be, I don't really wanna say more mushy probably, but it's probably a more sticky batter. It almost feels more muffiny than a cookie, but that's exactly what you want. Very easy, very good thing to have. And being in Michigan, you can substitute raisins for dried cherries, dried blueberries, whatever your favorite fruit. Visit us online to get this recipe at MichiganFarmingGarden.com or write to Michigan Farm and Garden Recipes, P.O. Box 461, Williamston, Michigan 48895. We'll send you this recipe and you can have breakfast cookies and celebrate wheat in your house. Have a great week and I'll see you back here next weekend. Bye-bye.